Material UI recently upgraded from version 4 to version 5, and it has been rebranded as MUI. And there was a pretty significant change to the styling APIs. They went from the old makeStyles hook-based syntax, and now you have two choices really. Now there's a styled or a new SX prop. So in this video today, I am mostly going to dive into the SX prop, but I'll talk briefly about styled just for a little bit of background and to talk about the differences. And then we will build a couple of components, and we'll use the SX prop extensively to do this. I'll demonstrate how you can make responsive components, styling on your components, how you can have nested selectors within the SX prop, how you can pass in both any kind of CSS values, or there's a superset of values on top of CSS. So really the SX prop is a superset of CSS that it accepts, and so you can pass in these values that we see in this chart here. And so a lot of really great things, in my opinion, in the upgrade to the new APIs. The SX prop, simply put, it requires less boilerplate code than the old makeStyles hook, and so I'm pretty excited to start using it in my applications and to be able to talk about it today in this demo. Today we're going to take a look at styling two different variants of text fields. You can see them unstyled here, and we're going to take it from really these pretty ugly things without any spacing between them to the components that you saw just a moment ago in the video. And what I've got set up so far is some pretty standard setup with these text fields. No unique styling on them, but I have set each one to its particular variant. We've got this filled variant here, and we've got an outline variant here, and what I will do is I will use the SX prop, and I will simply put, I'll just give them quite a bit of differentiation in their styling, but also some shared styling. So one really cool thing about the SX prop is it's less boilerplate code, and so there's no more import for the hook, the makeStyles hook, and I can simply, if I have shared styling, I can simply put it in a const here and use object destructuring within the SX to pretty quickly share any styling between multiple components. So it's really been a pretty good experience working with it, and I'm excited to get to demo it in this video. So let's dive right in with, let's start with the shared styling that they'll both have. So even before I do that, pretty simple to just get the object destructuring in here. So I'll start with that. And sometimes the syntax can be a little funny with these objects, and getting them to play nicely. We'll add additional individual style values into this SX prop for each of these so that you can see the syntax. But first, let's go up to the style prop, or the style const here, and we'll just we'll use a couple. I'll demonstrate pretty much every high-level idea or concept in the new SX prop. So the first thing that's important to know is SX can accept both typical CSS values like background color or font size, and it can also accept what's called in MUI the system. It's kind of a vague name. They actually had some systems in MUI 4 and Material UI 4, but they weren't unified. They were a little scattered around, but they've really unified that, and it's just a lot better, a lot more cohesive. So anytime that you can have an SX prop, then you can use the new system. So we can use things like MT2, that's margin top. And if I remember right, then a value of 2, what this is doing is it's plugging into our theme, and it's getting the spacing values from our theme. If I remember right, the default is 16 pixels for MT. So same thing here, we can do margin left of 2. So already we've got some spacing there. Probably don't need this margin left since I've got these stacked. I'm using also a new component, the stack component, and by default it will stack children components vertically. It's pretty useful for its goal, its purpose is to make styling one-dimensional layouts really slick, really fast. So it also can accept the SX prop. But one thing I want to point out, so I mentioned some of these systems existed in Material UI4. So if you recall the box component, which still exists in MUI5, you could put MT in the box component, and it could understand that as a prop. So now here we are. We're able to pass MT to any component via the SX prop. There's still a few that can accept it at the top level as a prop, like box can, typography can, grid can, and I think there's one more. Anyway, they've really streamlined it. I wouldn't even pass it in at the top level as a prop. I'd just pass it in the SX prop. So next up, we can use width. I'll add some width to this. So here, I'll demonstrate mobile responsive is pretty easy with the new SX prop. So I can easily pass in this object that, once again, the SX prop is what's known as theme aware. And so it's actually going and looking at the theme. Basically, it's using a shorthand to take whatever the object we passed in here, and it's going to the theme and looking at whatever the theme default values are for breakpoints. So there's an XS breakpoint, an SM breakpoint, an MD breakpoint, and so it's just really slick in how it does that. We could go into the theme and customize those. I'm not going to do that in the video, but that is an option that we could do. So I'll keep going here. So that's and I'll show a little bit. So that's the only mobile responsive that I'll get into, but I'll show a little bit of the typical CSS values that we're used to seeing. So like background color. You know what, let's go ahead and actually make this mobile responsive as well. So we'll do something really cool here. I'll do it in a moment. First, let's get it set up. So there we go. We have mobile responsive in here, and there's a lot of shorthands for interacting with the theme in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say secondary light. What this does is it's like saying theme.palette.secondary.light. But once again, it's just hooking into that theme. Super slick. Over here, I'll show, let's say that. That's a blue color there. So, and the secondary light is a purple color. So I can reduce the screen size in our app, and we'll be able to see those in action. Let's do just one more thing here, and then we'll take a look at our code so far and the results of it so far. I'll use box shadow here. So box shadow has a lot of values. In Material UI4, it was 25 different values for box shadow. The bigger the value, the more shadowing there was. As far as I know, there are still 25 values. It's a zero-based array, so the values start at 0. But anyway, so these correspond to some kind of box shadowing values. So here we go. We're looking good already. What we see here is our margin top in action. We've got our width is set. Our background color is now set. And we've got some box shadow. It's a little hard to tell, but there's box shadow in there. So let me shrink this down. See if we can get the mobile responsive to trip. There we go. So that's pulling in that secondary light value from the theme. Alright, so you can see that they both have been styled with this common styling that I've got in this const here. So now let's actually, let's dig into, I'll put just a little bit more styling, let's see, here just to demonstrate how this destructured object plays with just a typical value that you might pass in. So let's say just a value 2 there. So there should be a little more spacing between them. And we see that now, so that's good. And let's just differentiate them a little bit more. Let's just pass in a typical CSS value here so that you can see what the syntax looks like for that. And I'm not really intending to make anything beautiful here, more intending to demonstrate how this works. So let's just say a solid black border. There we go. We see that on the top one, not the bottom one. Great. It's exactly what we expect. So you can see this is destructuring all these values, so it's as though they're just placed here alongside these values. So really, really slick syntax in ES6 there. Let's get into something a little more interesting and tricky. Let's add a nested selector here. So nested selectors, they work exactly the same as they did in Material UI4. And I want to mention also that we are still using JavaScript syntax here. You notice this background color in CSS world, that would have been like that. But we are still in JavaScript world. Basically, this is like the same as JSS syntax here. This is JSS syntax. So I mentioned in the beginning that there is another styling API, and this is a good time to talk about it because it's one of the differences is it actually lets us write with CSS syntax. So the other API is the styled API. You may be familiar with that just from working with the styled library outside of Material UI, and the styled library is very popular. I just looked a bit ago, and this is October 1st today, and it was at about 3 million weekly downloads. So JSS is also very popular. It's at just a little less than that. So styled API, just real high level. Some of its strengths are that you're using CSS syntax, so that's really nice. And another really important one is it's actually very useful for abstracting your code for your components away, so that then you can just use those components with basically very little or no inline code. So I'm not going to get deep into their example here, but they're using the styled API here, and then down here, and they're creating this root component here. So you can see they've got const root. They have all this styling up there, and then down here it's just so clean, it's so abstract. They've got root, class name, classes.root. Super simple. Whereas in our example, we could abstract all of it truly into this style const, but you likely won't do that very often. How often do you have? You may often have like multiple buttons or multiple text fields in one view, but depending on how much styling there are, you may just have most of the styling in line. But anyway, let's dig into this nested selector, and I'll mention too, even with the nested selectors, even though I'll do one for this text field and then one for the other text field, truly I could put them both up in this style const. I'm just inlining them as an example, but if I put them in this style const, the nested selectors, I'm actually going to create them so that they look for classes specific to the variants. So there's an input filled class, and it's automatically applied in the DOM by MUI, and there's an outline. There's classes with the word outlined in them because of this outline variant, and there's an element called field set that's in this text field that we'll take a look at it in the DOM, but it's not in the filled text field. It's only in the outline variant. So anyway, with that said, let's dive into this nested selector that I promised you a few minutes ago. So very much not much has changed in the class names from MUI4. So this the text field really hasn't changed very much. I looked at it quite a bit in preparing this, and this particular class existed in Material UI4. So it's one of the props, or one of the components. Most of the components, it looks like, really have not changed too much. It's more the APIs and systems and so on that are behind the scenes. So anyway, we've got this selector here. What it's saying is, remember CSS syntax, if there's a space, then it's saying look for children. So it's basically saying parent or root element in the DOM, then select a child that has this class on it, and let's say just add the color white to the text. So let's take a look at that. There we go. So just to prove that it was not doing that before, I'll strip that one off. And there we go. See how it's dark again. So let's do one more. A little bit more of a complex, actually a lot more complex of a selector. So once again, we've got the the style const here. Now let's add in a pretty hefty selector here. VS Code doesn't help me too much. Alright, and it's lengthy enough that I want to break it into its own line here. So I mentioned the variant names. You'll often see them reflected in the DOM classes. We've got filled up here. This one I'm going to target MUI outlined input -root. And what we're going to do for this one is, let's say we want to add hover color to the border on hover. So we're going to select this pseudo-class, this hover pseudo-class. Now it gets real tricky. We're going to dig deeper in here. We're going to say target that field set that I mentioned. And let's add that border color of orange. Make it real ugly. Alright, first let's see if that works, and then I'll explain that syntax a little bit. So you can see it there. That border color is getting applied when I hover now. So pretty cool there. So this is saying when I hover over the element that has, the child element that has this class name on it, then go and find any field set children and apply this orange border color. So when you have it explained, it doesn't seem so bad, but it can be tricky to figure that out just dealing with the DOM. So let's take a look, and I'll show you those classes that I'm talking about. And it's good to take a look at the DOM too, because I'll show you how the SX prop is actually getting applied. So let's see, we're looking at this one. Here's that field set class, or field set element. And let's look for that. What is it that we're looking for? The MUI outlined input class. So there it is, MUI outlined input, and the field set is a child of that. So that's pretty cool there. And let's go and look at the other text field. And here we go, MUI filled input -root. So that's what I targeted up here. Now I mentioned, I'll show you this, how I can even have put these both up here. I'll just show you with one, put that up there. Because these classes have different DOM elements and different classes in the DOM because they're different variants, then that selector is being applied to both in the sense that it's active on both and looking for the proper class and looking for a field set component, but only this text field has that field set component. So that's why. So what that means is that you actually could have a pretty nice way of I could have put all the styling up here. At least I could have put these nested selectors. I only wanted the border on this first text field, but I could have slipped that border here with this color white inside of this MUI field input selector. I could have put this margin bottom in here with the inside of that MUI field input selector again. So pretty cool stuff here. Let's look at the top level one more time. I want to show you how, I'll collapse this just to make it clear. Okay, so we're looking at this first one here. So this is part of the difference in how styling works in the new MUI 5 style API with the SX prop. So you can see this class here. There's a little bit of extra kind of, so to speak, because we've got those media queries on it. So you can see this class here. And you see it again and again. That's because of those media queries. Let's look at it down here. And down here, once again, same class. But here we see, let's see, we see, what all did we put on here? We see the box shadow that we put on. We see the margin top that we put on. We see on this one, the margin bottom, that's unique to this particular component. We see that here. We see the border. Let's go look back at these media queries. And so we can see the width that we put on here. We can see that width 200 is being overridden because of the size of the screen. See the background color that's being overridden because of the size of the screen. and it jumped over here, but now we can see, okay, now we've got this width that's being applied. So pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Is, in my opinion, even though it's a little bit of work to upgrade sometimes, the styling system got a whole lot better. I want to mention, I think I mentioned already, but look how clean the imports are up here in our text field. So there's no import of, I'm actually in the wrong spot here. Let's go into our package JSON. So all I've got is MUI material. I don't have a specific import for any styling, so that's really nice. Now I will mention that there is actually an @MUI/styles, and you can import that if you still want to use the makeStyles hook. And it's deprecated, so still works, still supported, but is not the preferred MUI 5 way of doing things, of styling things. So I want to mention that there will be links to this in the video details, links to a blog article that I did that really dives deep into all this stuff, and it's got a link to this, to a code sandbox that has all this same code in it, and there will also be a link to a post I have where I have a coupon for a fantastic Udemy Material UI course, and so in that course there's 40 plus hours of content, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. I did not make the course, but it's simply a fantastic course. So I worked with the creator and got a coupon, so anyone who takes a look at my site can use that coupon and save a little bit of money on that course. So with that said, I hope that this was really helpful. I know that it can be overwhelming to upgrade, and but I think there's a lot of value in MUI 5, and I'm looking forward to doing new videos, additional videos that dive deep into it.